Awesome. All right, thank you everybody for joining us, those that are on the table that I can't see and those that are watching online. My name is Molly Swartzoff. I'm the Senior Vice President with Ray & Associates, helping facilitate your upcoming superintendent search along with the president of our firm, Mr. Michael Collins. Here with me today is Dr. Jarrett Bryant, so I'll turn it over to him and allow him to introduce himself, about 3 to 5 minutes, give a snapshot of who he is, and then we'll dive right into the questions.
Sure. So thank you, Molly, and thank you everybody for being engaged in this process. And it's really a pleasure to be here in Salt Lake City, as I would like to be your next superintendent. So a lot of you may be wondering, who the heck is this guy from Texas? Like, what's his background? What's going on there? So let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I actually started my career as a high school math teacher at a high-performing charter school called Yes Prep. I loved it. I loved my kiddos. We were located on the east part of town, which was predominantly Latino. I would say that the school was 99% Latino. And to be honest with you, that was eye-opening for me because I didn't know that there are schools that looked like that were, very homogenous. It was very different from the experiences that I had as a child growing up, and certainly different from the experiences I had when I went to Yale University for college. But I knew that education is just like the healthcare system, just like all sorts of different, like incarceration, there are systemic problems that need to be addressed specifically within education. And I'm a problem solver, and I want to figure out how to solve this particular problem, which in my mind is access to a high quality education for all students. That's my passion. So fast forward, I taught for a couple of years, and I was trying to figure out, how am I going to make my impact? I knew that I wanted to. I knew that education's it for me, but there are just so many different jobs and ways to do your work in education that I needed to find my path. So I was very fortunate that at the end of my second year of teaching, I met somebody with a crazy idea. He was a dreamer. He really had this strong notion that if you find your high achieving, low income students at your schools, even your most underperforming campuses, if you give them the right amount of resources and coaching and motivation, they could thrive. They could really do whatever it takes to achieve their life goals. So this program was called Emerge, and that's what we did. So he pitched the idea to me. He had just gotten $1 million from the superintendent. He had raised the funds to put this program in about 14 schools. And I spent the next year essentially being both a startup manager, but also a college counselor. So I had the distinct privilege of finding hundreds of students who, go to all sorts of different schools, comprehensive schools, small schools. We have single gendered schools in Houston. And we got to find really those diamonds in the rough, the students that we truly believe that if we didn't find them, they may fall through the cracks. They may not reach their full potential. And we work with them. So I got to design a program that finds these students and gives them, intense in-person SAT preparation, out-of-state college tours, one-on-one advising with a counselor that only has a caseload of about 50 kids, where nationwide, the counselor to student ratio is about 1,000 to 1. So it was a pleasure to find these students, but then also to help them realize what their potential was. So fast forward a few years after that, we sent thousands of students to highly selective colleges across the country, 164, all 8 Ivy League schools, Stanford, MIT, you name it. And the reason why these universities were important to me was not the elitism aspect. That's what a lot of people come at me about, like, why these schools? Why not that school? It's really that the schools that we target, there's a wide variety, but these students go to those colleges on full rides. They graduate at rates of 90+% from college. So today, our graduation rate from college for this program is about 90%. For a high achieving low income student who's not in the program, it's below 50. So there really is something to be said about sending students to schools that will invest in them, usually 4 or 5 times as much as a different, like let's say, open enrollment four-year university. So that was my passion, but and I don't want to eat too much into the question time, but I think it's important that you know kind of what's this guy about. So I solved this problem of getting these high achieving students into selective schools. That's great. I raised $8.5 million to expand this program to 42 high schools. The kids in that program, they're fine. Like, they're going to do great. It's tried and tested. I believe in it. We've since expanded to 5 school districts across the city of Houston. And like I said, we have hundreds of students in college right now who are thriving. But what about everybody else? And that was really the turning point for me in my career. Was I kept on asking myself, well, what about all the other students that need a college counselor too? So in Houston, the way that we operate, it's very decentralized. So what that means is that we have very strong site-based decision-making, but if you don't pair that with the resources that a principal needs, the budget, the training, the coaching, some decisions will be made that I wouldn't agree with the superintendent. So for example, 28 of our high schools did not have a college counselor, just period. There was zero college counselor, and our enrollment rate showed it. Our matriculation rate showed that we didn't have resources that we need. So I was very fortunate enough to raise another $5 million to put a college counselor in every single high school. But the interesting thing about that is I had to go out and find these hundreds of people to join my team over the course of 3 months. So when I expanded my team from about 5 people to over 100 people is when I was tapped to be an assistant superintendent for Houston ISD, which happens to be the largest district in Texas and the 7th largest district in the country, which serves over 200,000 students in almost as many schools as it is in the year. I was very surprised when I was approached about the job. You know, we're all friends here. I was 25 at the time when I was approached to be an assistant superintendent for this district. You know, I was nervous, but I keep on thinking back to what my passion is. And it was always about, as early as when I was a teacher, it was always about how can I make an impact? And I knew that if I could take the charge over college counseling and college and career readiness services, I could make a huge impact for hundreds of thousands of kids and their families. So that's what I've been doing. I know some of the questions talk a little bit more about some related things, but that's who I am. That's what I'm here. I've been doing this for over 6 years now, overseeing a lot of different things, ranging from international baccalaureate schools. So in Houston, I would say we probably have more IB programs than probably any other district that I can think of. So we have 30 programs in candidacy, and then we strategically have 20, we have 30 authorized and another 20 that are in candidacy. And it's very intentional while we're doing that, because right now in Houston, a lot of our IB programs are fantastic programs. We have them here in Salt Lake, but they're very concentrated on one part of town. So what if we can create K-12 IB feeder patterns in every quadrant of the city? That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of resources in terms of training and cost, but also in terms of principal buy-in. How do you get them really invested in this notion that, yeah, not only is this program good for kids, but I want this program at my campus because I think I can bring in more kids from, you know, the neighboring communities, because we have a lot of charter schools in Houston. We have a lot of competing options in Houston. So to really find like the best principals to really champion this on the ground was important to me. And that's why in a couple of years, we're going to have 50 IB programs all across the city, is because in partnership with the campuses, we were able to accomplish that. So I oversee IB programs, all of our advanced academics programming, and then we serve about 10 early college high schools, which are essentially high schools that provide associate's degrees before you even graduate from high school. In fact, most of these kids get their associate's degree like before their spring semester of senior year. So they're literally a college graduate before they're a high school graduate, which is really great. And that's something that I'm proud of expanding as well. So with that said, I'm a little bit of a chatterbox, so I'll move on to the questions.
No problem. It's about 10:08, so we have until 10:45, just so that you're aware for time. The first question, we're going to dive right in. What has the pandemic taught you about educational leadership? What was your biggest challenge, and what was the biggest opportunity? How have those things changed your vision/philosophy as a leader?
You know, this pandemic has been a really challenging time for all of us. It's really challenged me as a leader because I've been concerned for the health and safety of the students that I serve, the staff that I work with. So I have staff in 80 different buildings across the city of Houston that love their jobs, but are really scared about what does the future hold. And the weight of the children who, you know, if they could barely read at the 3rd grade level during normal times, quote unquote, how are they going to be after a year of all this, you know, uncertainty and going back to school, not in school? You know, in Houston, we've been open since October, so we've certainly had our trials and tribulations, but it's taught me a lot. You know what? I'll sound crazy, but I would say that this pandemic has given me a sense of optimism that I haven't had in a really long time. I don't think I would have applied for the Salt Lake City superintendency had it not been for the pandemic, because it really brought to light that a lot of the things that have been my passion, you know, I used to think that I was passionate about college and career readiness. It wasn't quite that. I think what I've been passionate about is innovation, doing things differently, really going against the grain and, you know, ruffling some feathers sometimes respectfully and with good conversation and back and forth in a common shared understanding. But I love doing things differently. There are just so many things that, you know, I work for a giant bureaucracy, for example, that were just non-negotiable. Like, we don't do electronic signatures. We don't do X or Y. And all it takes is a pandemic to realize that all these things that you thought were non-negotiables are actually negotiables. Now think about the really substantive things that can impact your kids in a very positive way. So I've been saying for years that we need to figure out ways to scale our best programs to serve all of our kids. So I work in Houston ISD, which is interesting in that we literally have some of the best performing high schools in the country, and we have the lowest performing high schools in the state. And yet, depending on what your zip code is, you may have a brand new AP teacher who just learned they were going to teach that content the week before. I'm sure she loves her kids, but she needs the training and resources to be successful. But meanwhile, a short bus drive away, you'll be at an elite top 10 US News and World ranked report, US News and World Report ranked high school, where you have students getting 3s, 4s, and 5s left and right. So I've said for years, you know what, we need to figure out a way to use technology to scale this. Like, what if we can have, I've had a couple of different ideas, but like way back when, like I would say like 6, 7 years ago, I wanted to essentially film our master AP teachers to provide content to other students. They don't have to be responsible for grading their assignments, but in terms of the content, how do we really scale and coach and mentor and provide resources to our teachers that are doing a fantastic job? That's one example. I've thought about ideas ranging from even having teachers share campuses. So let's say that instead of having a one-off AP psychology that you're really good at teaching, what if you only teach AP psychology and you split yourselves between those two schools? And that happens to be a course where a lot of our students have the AP potential to pass the exam and get the college credit. So I've been saying a lot of things that people are like, it's a nice idea. It's a good to have, but I don't feel urgent about it. Another example would be, you know, I'm really into digital learning, but not for the reasons that you would think. I actually think that we need to invest in our teachers in the classroom, but I think you can use technology to supplement learning. So I've created the first partnership with Khan Academy, which is a tool you use to, you know, study content and virtual modules. So I created a partnership with Khan Academy to track usage. That was really important to me even before the pandemic, because we need to make sure our students have access to this really great information that you can get from Khan Academy. So let's train our teachers and train our staff on how to utilize this to meet all of our individual campus goals. Did that successfully, experimented with virtual learning. So we partnered with Rice University and Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, the Facebook guy, to basically provide students with a virtual tutoring tool. So when the teacher's not there, how can I get better at science or math or chemistry? So I've been thinking about these things for years, but it wasn't until the pandemic that people really cared about what I was doing. It's like, wait, this is great. How do we, scale Khan Academy? How do we do more, AI? We're fortunate in that Houston has been a one-to-one laptop district for years, probably 7, 8 years. So we had that down, but this really made me realize that we can make a profound difference in education by pairing the potential of online learning with, some of the resources and lessons that we've learned through this pandemic. So, I think it's really taught me that, we have to think outside the box. Like, we just don't have enough time otherwise. Like, we have to consider all the different ways in which we can utilize this, terrible situation to really educate our students better. I think it's really brought to light where maybe we don't, at the state level, I don't make this rule as a superintendent, but maybe we don't need to measure mastery by, number of minutes in a seat in a classroom in order to get funding. I've never agreed with that. Obviously, we follow that because, we follow state laws, but that's not something that I agree with. And I think a lot of people agree with some of these ideas now that we've completely done a reset in the way that we've approached education. So it's been great to have a voice, but it's been great to also really work from ground zero. And I'll close with this thought on this question. I think we're all in this together because we're all learning together at the same time. I've certainly never done my job in a pandemic, neither did our principals, and neither did our teachers. And I've just been really blessed to be among colleagues that really want to do whatever it takes and roll up their sleeves. So, one example that, still sticks with me. Schools closed in March, and we have thousands of students that still want to take their advanced placement tests. We gave them a survey, and they didn't want to miss their exam. Like, they want to keep on, studying for the tests, even though their teacher may not be in school. How do we get them there? So we had teachers that really rolled up their sleeves and did whatever it took. So we tried new things. We did an online advanced placement institute where we brought in our top AP teachers, and they taught online lessons on Saturdays because they wanted to help their kids. and because our students really wanted to learn. And, you know, I was fortunate in Houston, we maintained our AP passing rate during the pandemic. And then our IB scores actually went up by 25% during the pandemic year because we invested time in writing and all these critical thinking skills that you can show on your interim assessments on top of your end of year assessment. So I love technology, but I do want to make it clear that I really think that if you invest time and resources in your principals and your teachers, that's where you see the real returns. Everything else can be somewhat of a gimmick and noise. I'm all about the teacher quality and for coming together. So I'll close there. We know we have some questions left.
Perfect. Tell us about your path to leadership. How will you use your position to foster growth in current and future leaders in our district? How do you plan to identify and develop talent within the district?
Sure. You know, I've been very blessed as a professional in that, you know, I've always been kind of a lost soul until recent years. I knew that I've loved education, didn't really know how. You know, I knew that, you know, I'm a math guy, I can like solve problems, but I wasn't really sure which exact problem in education I wanted to solve. And I've been surrounded by fantastic mentors who've always seen something in me that I didn't quite see yet. So the founder of that program that I talked about, the Emerge program, he's the one in collaboration with my superintendent at the time that took a risk on me. They knew that I was passionate about college counseling and, you know, serving students, and they put me in a role knowing that, you know, I had room to grow. I wasn't going to be out of the box the best assistant superintendent on earth on day one, but they knew that I was coachable, and they knew that there was something there that was going to keep me intrinsically motivated to be the best person that I could be. And I delivered. So I've always been surrounded by people that are pushing me to think about things that I wasn't thinking about. Like I said, I was 25 when I was tapped to be an assistant superintendent. I'm much older than 25 now. Don't let the full hair of head fool you. But on a serious note, like, for example, I was a little younger, a little non-traditional. I hadn't studied education in college. So I had a nice talking to from my mentor superintendent who said, you know, it's time to go to grad school. And I was like, really? I hadn't really thought about that. I'm not sure that's for me. He was like, no, like I really see a lot of potential in you. It turns out that the University of Texas at Austin has the top 3 ranked superintendent program in the country. And it's only, you know, an hour and a half, 2-hour drive away from Houston. Like, I don't want to make any barriers, you know, prevent you from pursuing this opportunity. So we'll make it work. You go to class in Austin and you work here at the same time. And I think this is really going to help you get to the wherever my path will take me. I was not committed to being a superintendent at the time, but when I entered this program whose alumni educate half of the school children in Texas, I really got to become acquainted with a really deep network of fantastic educational leaders. And I never really saw myself in a lot of superintendents because, you know, I'm kind of a weirdo. I'm a little non-traditional, as they would say. But I began to meet enough people who believed in me and mentored me to where I realized I don't have to look like Dr. Greer from Houston, or I don't have to look like so-and-so from other school district. I can really lead authentically and in a way to where I can motivate people to do good work for kids because we're in this together. We're working alongside the goals, and I have the potential and the ability to set the direction after our board sets our goals in a way that impacts students positively. So I didn't see that in myself. Somebody else did. They pushed me to the grad school thing. I did graduate from that top superintendent program, and I became obsessed. I realized that, you know, it's really, when I really think about it, the only reason why I was able to do this fun program for high achieving students out of teaching was because there was a superintendent out there that really had a personal reason for wanting to get more poor kids into Ivy League schools. And he used some political capital to make this program happen. He prioritized it over different things, and he made unconventional hiring choices, you know, people like me and some of the people on my team to make it work because he had a vision. And when I step back as somebody who's been an executive for, you know, over half a decade now, I realized that the power of a superintendent is huge when it comes to thinking about the impact we can make, not just when I'm here, but even if I were to leave Houston or wherever that is. In terms of principal leadership, how do we figure out ways to really create the best pipeline of talent? Like, I'm a big believer in growing your own and finding the best and giving them the resources they need to thrive. I think one of the most important duties that I have as a superintendent is to ensure that our schools are led by highly effective administrators like the people in this room. And I want to make sure that I don't make that decision in a vacuum when the opportunity arises, that it's done alongside people who have a track record of leading schools and they know what it takes. And it doesn't always have to be conventional. I'm not a believer in, oh, he went to such and such graduate program and they were an assistant principal, therefore it's their turn. I don't believe in that. I believe that you can show results in a way where, you know, it could be different. I believe that it could. But I also believe in the power of a traditional preparation pathway too. But I'm really, really cognizant of all the different ways that you can demonstrate mastery and readiness for that next step. So I believe in, for example, investing a lot of resources in our assistant principals. I think that there's too much scrambling going on for new principals when the situation arises. And, you know, I shouldn't have to go and search statewide to find the best principal for a high school if I spent the time for years investing in leadership programs for our assistant principals and deans and other people to really figure out if the principalship is the best role for them. That's something that I believe in for both the principal role, but also different positions in the district office too. Like some teachers thrive being in the classroom, and there are others that thrive in the classroom and they love curriculum and instruction, and they love writing lesson plans. They love coaching teachers. What if we created pathways for teachers to really explore all the different opportunities in education where they could make an impact, whether that's an administrator, but also a curriculum writer or a coach or whatever that is. So I've always been a fan of these rotational programs. I did this as a teacher where, you know, we have our summer off if we don't have additional responsibilities going on. So why can't we spend the summer rotating through getting additional dollars to learn about all the different functions within education and figuring out what my path is? So I'm invested in Salt Lake and I want to stay here. And then I, as superintendent, because here's the problem, when you're in a district that has 30,000 employees, in my case, is that I don't even know who all the best teachers are personally. I know their, you know, little box in the spreadsheet, but I don't know them personally. So I think as a superintendent, it's incumbent upon me to think about ways that I can also have touch points with these really incredible people who are in our district. And that takes work and that takes intentionality. And that's something I'm ready to do because we need to really develop people here in Salt Lake because, you know, the changes will come at some point and a principalship will open or X role will open. And I want somebody who's ready to sit in that seat right away. So whether that's outside training, coaching, mentoring principals, creating formal leadership positions for principals to coach other principals, those are all things that I believe in because you have to play the long game. So that way, when the pandemic strikes or such and such happens, we're ready. We have succession planning and thinking ahead. As I say, I play chess, I don't play checkers. I understand that it's a long-term game.
Great. Despite having very supportive policies in place, LGBTQ and other minoritized students regularly report experiencing hostile school environments in Salt Lake City school districts, or Salt Lake City schools, I'm sorry. What steps would you take to ensure that all students, families, and staff in a Salt Lake City school district experience a supportive and inclusive school environment?
Right, that's a great question. And I think one, it's positive that we have a supportive policy in place. But what I'm hearing from this question is that sometimes there's a gap between what's happening out there and what the policy says. And I think that starts from the top down. Like I don't believe that students should be marginalized because in this case, it seems like it's an LGBT issue. I think that we need supportive classrooms. We need supportive work environments. And I think that starts from the top and making sure that we have affinity groups and spaces where people, whether it's staff and students, can talk about these issues that impact them. Like I come from a place where I know what it's like to walk into a room and to maybe not feel welcome or to not feel like I kind of need to work 10 times as hard to be perceived one time as competent, or to, you know, kind of have people think that, you know, I'm this because I'm this identity because it's different from theirs. Like I'm all about bringing people together and talking about the issue. You know, banning things or putting things in policies or, you know, one way to go about it, but I call that a technical solution. I'm more about the adaptive changes where have I trained my principals on how to talk to staff and potentially students about these issues of potentially race and class and sexual orientation and all these different things? Have we actually had those types of conversations? When these situations arose, where was the superintendent? What was he or she saying at the time? Because I know that if I were aware of any sort of situation where an LGBT student was being marginalized or was reporting a hostile environment, I'd want to step up and say, that's not acceptable. If it did happen, from the very top, it's not acceptable. That's not how we roll. That's not how Salt Lake operates. We're an inclusive environment and we respect people of all opinions and beliefs and identities. And when we have issues, and issues do happen, we talk about them. And we have the training and we have the tools in our toolbox to have really difficult conversations. These are not the things you can sweep under the rug. I don't believe that. And for better or for worse, I'm the type of person who puts stuff out there just because I feel it in my heart. And I feel in my heart that if a student feels that they can't come to school because they're LGBT or whatever that is, that's impacting their learning experience. And that's a direct contrast to what I'm trying to do, which is to make sure that our schools are operating in such a way where students feel welcome. Because when students don't feel welcome, or they're hungry, or they're scared, or don't know what's going on in the world beyond them, it's going to impact their learning. Just like it impacts all of us when we encounter these conflicts and challenges. It can infect the work environment. It could really create a toxic culture, and that's not what we want. So I think being very clear and direct as a superintendent is key. I think that very elaborate and extensive investigations, like a transparent process, is also key as well. Like, we shouldn't be cherry picking which situations that we investigate or not. I think that if something is brought to light, we will treat both parties with respect and then also do a thorough investigation to figure out what are all the facts and what consequences are appropriate for whatever this particular situation was. But this is not just LGBT. This could be for the color of your skin, the things you believe in, you know, your culture, whatever that is. It doesn't matter. We speak over 80 languages here in Salt Lake City. Like, we all come from so many different backgrounds, both ethnically, but also socioeconomically, and then in terms of our identity. So this is such a beautiful melting pot for us to really show the rest of the country how we do it right, how we really train and empower staff to have those difficult conversations so that we can make the real change happen, which are those dialogues, which aren't always pretty, but that's the only way that you heal.
And the next question kind of goes hand in hand. Earlier this year, a group of 6th grade students requested that we hang a Black Lives Matter flag in our school. After placing the flag next to our school's pride flag, an Instagram post went viral, and a vocal group of individuals took issue with both flags. The school and administrators were targeted by this group demanding that we remove the flags. How would you have advised the administrators and district to handle the situation?
So this is an example of one of those things that gets really dicey. I think if I were a principal in this situation, I could see why it would be difficult for me to not really know how to act, where it's like, wow, you know, this stakeholder is feeling oppressed by this symbol, and yet we have to question what is oppressive about a symbol that stands for love and inclusivity and, you know, protecting people who feel marginalized. I do honor people's perspectives, and even if I don't agree with them, we need to hear that conversation. We need to get it out. And I don't know the specifics of this particular situation to say what the administrator should have done, but I get the gist of it. You know, I'll be the first one in my office to have an LGBT pride flag in my office, and it's not going to be a symbol of division. It's going to be a symbol of, we welcome all identities, and there are all sorts of different symbols you can use to really promote positivity. Now, that said, as a district, we do have policies around things where, you know, people may feel discriminated, hate speech, all sorts of language that are directly abrasive. I don't think in this particular situation that these symbols were intended to be abrasive. I would need to investigate further into the context. I think the context matters a lot. The devil's always in the details, for sure. But I don't think that any of us need to die on our LGBT flags and BLM flags. I think that if you have a conversation, you'll probably learn that a lot of people are feeling marginalized, not just in this district, but in this country because of the color of their skin. And we need to be sensitive to that. I also want to be sensitive to the individual that feels, you know, threatened or alarmed by these symbols. But I wouldn't just say to them, you know what, we're going to keep these flags up, like you need to just take a seat. No, I would be the superintendent that calls a town hall to really talk to all the stakeholders and listen. And I want to hear those opinions that I don't want to hear. I mean, to be honest with you, anybody that thinks that a pride flag is a, you know, abrasive symbol of hate, like, I don't agree with that. Like, I don't see that perspective instinctually. I don't think I'll ever agree with that. But I will tell you that I want that person in a town hall with me or in a phone call, wherever they feel safe, to really just let me know, okay, what is it about this symbol? Because I feel, again, going back to the adaptive solutions, not the technical solutions. A technical solution is just like banning all flags for all things, all countries, like no LGBT, no BLM. That's a technical solution, but it's not addressing either the hate or the uncertainty or the fear in people's hearts that make them think that when they see this flag, it's something bad. I don't think there's anything inherently bad about a flag, but what does it mean to you that's making you react in this way? That's what I really want to get at, because who knows? Maybe I'm just too optimistic and perhaps naive, but I think that when people are exposed to things and peoples and identities to which they're not very familiar, it could change their whole perspective. There was a time where I still remember where I had never met an undocumented student before, that I certainly had different views on all sorts of different political issues back then. But I will say, having worked in, a large urban school system, I've met so many different types of people since then, not just undocumented students, but, non-binary students, students who are trans, LGBT, students that, were out there marching for what they felt was their lives during the protest this summer. Like, I've met so many different people that have a perspective that I don't necessarily share, but I think what I share with everybody is an urgency to empathize and to listen. And that's both with people that, instinctually, I probably will agree with the student that had the LGBT flag. I'll probably be on their side naturally, but my job is not to agree with people that I agree with naturally. It's to really make sure that the voices are heard and the conversations are had and we can heal. I'm not going to change somebody's mind, but I'm going to make sure that at least I have some sort of baseline as to where this is coming from, because it sounds toxic.
Wonderful. We have just under 15 minutes left. We have one more question, and then we're going to open up the floor for you to ask questions of those around you. So we'll go ahead and get the final one in here, and then we'll put everybody else in the hot seat. Last question. Why are you interested in Salt Lake City, and why are you the right fit?
Sure. One of the things that I've realized is that urban education is at the center of my heart. Like, I'm going to be in education for the long haul. I'm going to be serving districts that will probably serve large percentages of economically disadvantaged and minority students. I loved being in Houston for the past 8 years, and I could spend another 8 years there because it has a lot of the things that really excite me about Salt Lake. We have very diverse populations. We have very different, distinct communities that have distinct needs. And the issues of education in this environment are very complex. I like places where there's so much opportunity to do better. So in Houston, I think I stayed there so long because I saw so many opportunities for students to, pass more AP exams, or for doing better on the SAT, or for going to top colleges. And, we've made so much progress. And I think for my next step, one, I'm really excited that Houston will be fine, without me. I love being there, but I've also built a really deep bench of incredible talent across our 80 secondary campuses for the past 8 years. And if I were to leave, it would be specifically because I want to go to a place just like Salt Lake City, where our populations are growing at both the school level, but also on the aggregate level. And, I've seen this, Houston is a very big district, and we see this on the campus level or geographic level, where when demographic changes happen, sometimes you have to rethink the way in which you deliver your program delivery in the schools. You might think about, why am I offering extra support to an English language learner when I didn't have to 10 years ago? Well, it's because our student body looks different than it did 10 years ago. Why does my school look different now? And I can't just do what I did 20 years ago. Again, like with different communities and different voices and different perspectives, means that we need to figure out what is it going to take to really serve our students to the best of their ability. So when I think about a place like Salt Lake City, I do see those changes in demographics, but I'll put it out there, I definitely like a challenge too. And I do see a district that has a lot of potential. We're in the state of Utah, which is unique in that essentially we have, open district lines, where essentially a student can enroll in whatever school that they want to. And I've looked at our numbers, and I see that we do have declining enrollment trends. And I do see that our budget projections are tied to our enrollment basically staying the same. So I see a district where 2-3 years down the line, things aren't going to be rosy unless drastic action happens. And I'm not a fan in closing schools or anything like that. In fact, I'm here for the opposite. I'm here because I think that this place is right to be the premier destination for any student who wants to receive a high quality urban education. I mean, I really want to be in Salt Lake and help create an environment where people in Nevada or people in Arizona are really looking at Salt Lake City to figure out, how do we brace for change, whether it's changes in enrollment, whether it's changes in demographics, whether it's, who is the leader in serving low-income student populations. I think we can do that here. I think that we have a really great staff here. I think that we have a board that really wants to steward change for the next chapter of Salt Lake in a very positive and empowering way. And then I also think about, what do I bring to the table? What have I done in Houston? It's really been tackling these challenges as they relate to equity and opportunity. So for example, about 10 years ago in Houston ISD, our AP participation rate in terms of tests taken was probably about 20%. So then we did this thing where we paid for all AP exams for all students. And we made it the expectation where you take the exam if you're in the class. And the funny thing is that our passing rates dropped because you had more students participating, but we had thousands of more students getting 3s. And those students tended to be students of color, students who were low income, students who always had the potential, but really never had the barriers taken away to be successful and to get the college credit they deserve. That's the type of work I've been involved with, making sure that more students than ever test college ready so they can qualify for dual credit courses, associate's degrees, thinking through what the trends are long term. What's exciting about Salt Lake and Houston is that we have thriving business communities that want to help our kids. There are so many industry certificates and career and technical programs that our students can take part in right now that will eventually result in amazing jobs that they could take right out of high school, or if they want to go get additional credentials in community college or a 4-year, they could go back. I'm all about giving students different opportunities, and I think that we have all the ingredients in Salt Lake. I actually think that we're doing a lot of incredible things right, but I guess in some ways I am a visionary, and I can kind of see a way where we can take it to the next level, even in terms of IB, for example. Like, I'm surprised that we haven't had an IB elementary program up until now, but now I'm so excited that we're on a path. We're going to have one of our first IB primary years programs in the state of Utah. So now my question is, well, where's the middle years program going to go? How do we create those K-12 feeder patterns? How do we extend these opportunities? Because again, our enrollment trends don't look good. And we don't even know the full magnitude because of the whole virtual situation and students kind of being all over the place. But the numbers are going to hit and they will impact our funding. And I think that I'm the right person for the job to really make Utah that destination district where we're doing all these incredible things. We have this K-12 IB continuum program. We have great programming. We have programs like SLASA. We have incredible principals with a track record of leading success and doing whatever it takes. I think that once you get all of the different players in the right places, once you have, me as superintendent who's making sure that we're all in the right seats on the bus, I think for the most part we are, but we can make some adjustments to where people can even magnify their impact. That's exciting for me because I do see a Salt Lake City where we are the leaders in urban education. So that's why I'm here. I want to challenge, but I also want to work with good people that I think can help achieve a vision. And I think that I'm the superintendent that is going to listen very well to every single person in this room and watching, and also our Board of Education, and to really think, where do we need to go forward? I need to listen, I need to learn, and then I need to strategize. This is a giant game of chess and all the pieces are against us. I don't think that, and I hope the state's watching, Utah State, I don't think we're investing enough in education. I think we need more resources. I think that telling schools that they're going to get less funding if they do things that promote safety and wellness, I don't think is right. So when, should I be the superintendent? You're hiring somebody who's the visionary, but you're also hiring somebody who's going to be a champion for the changes that need to happen, who's going to say the things that need to be said. And I think people will listen to me. And I believe that in Salt Lake, we can really be leaders amongst our peers. We can really start bringing in students who maybe thought Granite was a better choice for them, but no, actually, no. Why would I do that? Salt Lake City's right here. I want to take advantage of these programs. We're doing it in pockets. I'm not going to pretend this isn't happening. but I want to take it to the next level. So I'll go ahead and close there.
Wonderful. So the final question, we get to turn the tables a little bit, Dr. Bryant. Are there any questions that you have for those sitting around you that you'd like to ask? And we do have about 5 minutes.
Sure, and anybody's welcome to answer this, but what do you need in a superintendent to make your job, easier, for lack of a better term, but to be effective in your job? What do you need from your superintendent?
One thing that kept coming up in this group over and over, we've been talking the last 6 months, and what Larry currently provides is he gets out of the way, allows for innovation, trying new things, thinking outside of the box, so we haven't had that before. We want to continue that. That's one thing.
But when he doesn't get out of the way, like it's not available.
Yeah.
It's very available. Yeah. So I would add that.
Yeah, having access to district leadership and then feeling like that there's also opportunities to grow and be supported when we have ideas that we think will benefit our communities and our schools and our teachers.
So would it be accurate to say that we really appreciate the opportunity to be autonomous, but to have access to the resources when we need them so that we can do our jobs effectively when obstacles come up?
I think very personable, approachable, and present is huge.
I don't know if I speak for everybody, but it's a disruptor. We want to disrupt and move forward.
Anything in particular you would like to disrupt?
Yeah, the whole system. Like,
All right, let's take a wrecking ball.
Colonize curriculum and be an anti-racist district. So.
But I think that's where Larry, your Superintendent Madden, has put us as well, right? That we feel like we're on that brink of having those opportunities to disrupt things, to look for innovation. And that's why I think a lot of us are feeling we really want us to take that next step and have someone who's going to support us when we're looking at making those changes that we feel are vital to our district.
We feel empowered to make changes. Not every one of them is going to work, and we're going to fall down sometimes. And feeling like that's okay. Let's change this system. If we come up with an idea and it doesn't hit the mark, we learn from it and we move on and we get better.
It's speaking in a generalization, the reading phase has been the same for 15 years. And we've been through turnaround and focus, and it really, generally speaking, is the same. So we've got to do something way different that's been done. We really want, I use that just as one specific example, but I think that I just of species, and I think there is a vision of change.
So I think what I'm hearing is that we're open to changes. We're excited to try new things. And I think one of the scariest things can be when we're just kind of scared of failing because we don't know what's going to happen. But what if we had an environment where we can try new things, and if it doesn't go right, that's just the cost of operating business, right? But for every one idea that maybe doesn't work well, maybe there's 5 or 6 that are going to do incredible things, right? So it's just a matter of having the courage to make the leap and having that environment that promotes that.
And Dr. Bryant.
Can I just add one thing?
Absolutely. No, go ahead.
That we need to start from how can we do this as opposed to why we can't do this. I think for too long, we've gone back to policy, we've gone back to rules, we've gone back to budget and said, we're not able to do this. Sounds to me like you come from a place of, let's try it.
Yeah, that's me. No deficit mindset here. Thinking about how can we add the addition superintendent.
And Dr. Bryant, we did have one question submitted. It's technically 10:44, but do you feel comfortable addressing a question real quick and then we'll wrap up?
Sure.
This one came on the chat. It appears that you have lots of secondary and high school experience. What do you bring to the elementary and middle school students, families, and educators within our district?
Oh, I'm so glad you bring that up. So I did spend a lot of time on the secondary college counseling piece. And, at the end of the day, we did a lot of great things for kids. We got more students into college, matriculating, financial aid, all that stuff. But then we ended up hitting a peak, and we had been asking ourselves, well, how do we kind of push the needle? So that's when I actually leveraged our Title I dollars to create a new program called Explore, which is essentially kind of like that Emerge program, but it's for middle school. So we designed the whole thing around the middle school experience. And that was a hit. So now we have college counselors in all the middle schools. And again, remember, 7 years ago, 28 of our high schools did not have a college counselor. Now we have them in the middle schools. And now I have a program that goes down to the 5th grade. So we're really thinking about what does college and career readiness conversation look like for a 5th grader? I think there's a lot of formative years, or I think in those formative years, there's a lot that you can get accomplished. So I've been excited about that. And then one of the reasons why I've been pushing so hard for these IB candidate schools is because unlike the diploma program, which some perceive to be elite and kind of, exclusive, the primary years program and the middle years programs are wall to wall. Like they're meant to, train every single one of your core content teachers into emphasizing the philosophies of the IB, such as collaboration and thinking freely and all these different things that are just good instruction. But it's for every student. And I believe that a combination of these 5th grade college counselors, a K-12 IB education is going to increase the pipeline that eventually will make it past the finish line in high school. So, and then of course, we have quite a few IB elementary schools. So supporting them through their specific programming has been exciting. Their biggest challenge, for example, happens to be foreign language. It's hard to get a foreign language teacher who knows how to teach a foreign language to an elementary student. A lot of them are used to more the high school pedagogy kind of way of doing things. So it's been great troubleshooting with principals around, okay, well, this is how we can expose students to global learning in an elementary context.
Wonderful. All right, we're at 10:46, so great job staying within the time frame. I appreciate everybody watching live and those around the table that I cannot see, and especially you, Dr. Bryant, for taking the time to speak with us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.